with the author of Crossing the Divide 20 Lessons to Help You Thrive in Cross-Cultural Environments. Jessica Stone is currently a correspondent in Washington, D.C. for the Voice of America. She was also a correspondent for the China Global Television Network and was the president of the White House Press Group during the Trump administration. So, Jessica, it's great to be able to speak with you. And I'm curious because you were president of the White House Foreign Press Group. So, you've had a lot of experience with reporters from foreign countries. Tell us, and also reporting for China and for the US. Tell us, like, what you've learned in these cross cultural environments.
Well, you have to start from a place of admiring and respect for the differences, not jumping to conclusions over those differences. In my book, I talk about really the starting point I believe everybody needs to have is identifying their own cultural biases and foundations, because we all compare everyone else to what we know and to what we think. And so, really taking the time to self assess and take a deep dive into what shapes my ethos, my work ethic, my sense of time, my method of communication, and why am I this way, and why is my family this way? Whether it's economic status or languages that you grew up around, geography, religion, race, ethnicity, all of those things come to bear, but they don't completely dictate, but they really shape who you are. And so using the time to get that information about yourself so that you can calibrate for the differences you discover in others is really, really critical. And it's something I've written about in the book, but I'm also working with students to really challenge high school and college students to think through what do they need to do to be more effective communicators and leaders in multicultural contexts, because that is now. It's not the future, it's now. Americans don't have to leave their home. They could live in Iowa and still be working internationally.
What would you say is the most difficult thing about understanding other people's cultures and mentality?
For me, it's really the values that can be so different, that can be really hard to overcome. And, you know, ultimately, as a reporter who believes in truth, I find myself, my whole reason to be is to discover truth. So when truth is defined differently, when it's
Mm.
controlled, when it's what the boss says and it's not what you empirically can discover as truth, that gets a little hairy and definitely uncomfortable. I mean, at some point, we all have, our red lines around what we will and won't, what we can and can't accept. Legal differences, different concepts of justice, sentencing guidelines. Those are really different views, and they're very starkly different between China and the United States. And I do think what's hard too is, as an American, we preach authenticity and you got to be real, right? And yet it doesn't feel real to calibrate. It doesn't feel authentic to calibrate for the population that you're working with. You don't feel like you can be yourself. And in some ways, you can't be your exact self, but you will be the self that they can understand through their cultural lens. I think I struggle definitely with the sense of how do I overcome the idea that I have to change who I am to work in this context. And I think what I ultimately settled on was the idea that no, I don't have to change who I am, but I do need to change how I interact. And that's not disloyal to my culture or to my sense of who I
Mm.
am. That is a choice to be the most effective person in that environment that I can be.
So you don't have to lose your own identity to identify with others, right? That's one of your lessons.
My favorite one, yes, because I really feel like our modern American culture is telling us, no, you just have to become whatever's around you. And I think that would be a terrible loss if people just become the same. Then we
Hmm.
lose the individual ideas they have, the individual observations they have, the creativity they bring. You don't have to go that far. You're not trying to become someone else, but you can identify with somebody else by learning the toolkit that we talk about in Crossing the Divide. And that is invaluable.
Well, I think it's fascinating what you wrote, and that you've, been able to do so well to thrive in so many cross-cultural environments as a journalist. So thank you for your book. I've been speaking with Jessica Stone. She's the author of Crossing the Divide: 20 Lessons to Help You Thrive in a Cross-Cultural Environment.